In my last video, we covered Lyft, and we couldn't talk about Lyft without talking about Uber. Lyft is like the nice guy in the rideshare game, while Uber is for sure the Chad. During the mid-2010s, Uber under the CEO and co-founder Travis Kalanick did not let anything get in the way of its pursuit for growth and dominance. I respect anyone and everyone that does what is best for their company, but some of the tactics he used were definitely a bit suspect. Some of the stuff he did outside of work got some unwanted media attention too. In this first part of our two-part video series, we're going to go over his first business endeavors before Uber, which are actually extremely interesting. Coupled with his fiery drive for success, the lessons Travis learned from these experiences paired him to be the ruthless, cutthroat Uber CEO that took over the world in just 7 years. Travis's story is full of ambition. He was always a hustler. His grade school classmates described him as a driven guy and a sort of used car salesman that was great at telling stories. In high school, he worked for that MLM company Cutthroat doing door-to-door sales. His first business was launched when he was only 18 years old. It was an SAT prep course called New Wave Academy where he advertised that enrolled students scored over a 1500 on the exam. He himself scored at 1580 on the SAT and enrolled at UCLA as a computer engineering major. There, he met Michael Todd and Vince Busam, who were working on a project called Scour in Vince's dorm room. It was a search engine with a focus on images, videos, and audio files. It was basically the Google Images and Google Video of the late 90s. Google Images didn't come about until 2001, and Google Video Search didn't come about until about 2005. Anyway, Travis came aboard as an employee, dropped out of school, and collected unemployment while working on building up Scour. He credited himself as one of the founders, which irritated the other guys, but considering the amount of work this guy was putting into the startup, they couldn't really say anything about it. Plus, the investors assumed the charismatic guy amongst the other computer kids was one of the founders anyway. The crew moved their office into one of the co-founders' apartments where Travis worked out of one of the bedrooms. There were 13 people working out of this cramped apartment at one point. There was so much strain being put on the building's electrical system that printing a document would blow a fuse, and people had to shut off their monitors if they wanted to cook up their lunch in the microwave. So what was Travis's role in the company? What better role for the extrovert than to let him be in charge of marketing? When he wasn't calling up everyone and their uncles and shoving Scour down their throats, he would go to the college dorm halls and hang Scour branded bottles of lube on their doorknobs. They would read, "Do not enter, sex in progress." The SX and sex obviously being the acronym for the company, Scour Exchange. The marketing campaigns paid off, and Scour was getting millions of users. So many that the site would crash with the amount of demand it had. Napster came along in 1999 with a similar platform that allowed users to share music files with each other. Users would upload their music files onto a centralized server that allowed others to search through them pretty easily. Since all the music files uploaded were in MP3 format, they were automatically shareable when users downloaded them. This reduced the strain on the servers by allowing there to be more sources from which the content can be downloaded from. With Scour, the multimedia files were still sourced from around the web, which caused it to be faulty, so they utilized Napster's technology to fix this issue. But just like Napster, Scour faced a ton of legal issues from artists and other content creators who were not getting paid for their content. There were $250 billion in lawsuits against them. And yes, that's $250 billion, not $250 million. This was just too much for these boys working out of an apartment to handle, so they filed for Chapter 11, and that was it. The assets were split amongst them in a 20-minute court session. Our man Travis felt defeated. In the weeks after Scour went bankrupt, he'd sometimes spend 14 hours a day in bed. Mind you, he dropped out of school, worked a year without paying himself, but was dead set on this business making him a billionaire. He had big aspirations, so we can't really blame him. But it didn't take him long for him to get his shit together again. He went back into business with one of the co-founders of Scour, Michael Todd, and launched RedSwoosh, another peer-to-peer technology company in 2000. Unlike Scour, RedSwoosh was not a search engine that allowed users to pirate content off the internet, but rather, RedSwoosh forged partnerships and licensing agreements with entertainment companies, record labels, and other content providers to distribute their music and multimedia content. Travis dubbed RedSwoosh the revenge business for this very reason. The same record labels, entertainment companies that were suing him for $250 billion were now paying him for his services. You see guys, Travis appointed the same engineer that developed Scour who developed a centralized network that allowed for the efficient and reliable distribution of large files like music and video. The entertainment companies needed something like this to distribute their content to a large audience at a faster rate than the methods that were already available at the time. But it was not all sunshine and roses. Not at all. The company had a handful of employees that they could barely even cover the payroll for. A meeting Travis had with the Akamai CTO to make a deal was canceled because he literally died on one of the planes that crashed on 9/11. This was disastrous. 9/11, coupled with the dot-com crash, was a perfect recipe for venture capitalists to steer clear from providing funding to tech and software companies like RedSwoosh. Later on, RedSwoosh committed a federal crime by withholding income taxes from their employees' payroll checks in an effort to save money. Travis denied he was involved, putting the blame on his partner, but there were literally internal emails he wrote showing his involvement. Then, Michael went behind Travis's back and emailed an investor asking if he'd like to hire himself and the rest of RedSwoosh's engineering team. Travis felt betrayed. The two broke up and Travis started living with his parents to save money, which he literally said sucked because he wasn't getting any girls. He was without a salary for 3 years, surviving on ramen from the clearance bin in his local Safeway. The year is 2003. Microsoft flew over to meet with Travis and offered to buy up the company for $1.2 million. He owed $900,000 in debts, and the $300,000 left was not nearly enough to put a smile on his face for the years of hard work he put into this venture. He literally cussed out all the Microsoft guys for their lowball offer and ended the meeting outright. Travis is really a guy who knows the value in himself and his product. This goes to show he has never been one to settle for less. Time went on, and others were working without getting paid and left. Then, the last engineer on the team walked out to work for Google instead. Around this time, Travis would have signed a $1 million deal with AOL, had a tech blog called Fuck Companies, not written a story about how everyone left. You know, I can't really think of any better publicity than to have you and your company be published onto a blog called Fucked Companies. So they walked away, and what did Travis end up doing? He took a $1.8 million investment from Mark Cuban in 2006, hired some more programmers, and moved his company to Thailand. I'm sure it was solely just in an effort to save money. Now, remember Akamai from earlier, the company whose CTO died in 9/11? The one that was going to meet with Travis to make a deal all those years before? Well, they came back around and ended up buying the company in 2007 for $23 million. Our man Travis? He walked away with $2 million. His hard work paid off. This truly is an inspiring lesson in business and resilience. Travis would wake up in the morning with no money, no team, and just get to work. This guy got his ass kicked 100 times before walking away with this money. He lost so many friendships and relationships along the way, and he made so many sacrifices. But now, he was finally able to take a breather. Stay tuned for part 2, guys.